Bobby, we're just doing a class on ends and means.
Ends and means, okay.
Yes, sir. And the young sister that was speaking was sitting here by Dolores Huerta. Gabby, raise your hand.
Hi.
So she's from Bakersfield and works with Dolores and organizing youth the way that we're doing here and the way we do up in Tacoma. So everyone else is most everyone else is a high school student, I believe. Am I right?
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome. It's great to have you here again.
Okay.
And thanks for everything you've done to change America.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Give it up again for.
So what do you want me to do? I'm trying to get a handle on what to present. I mean, I feel I owe you a whole lot. We talked about sessions that never got completed or started. So,
I think,
you want to Q&A me, or do you want to, there's organizing techniques and tactics, how I did demographic organizing all the voting precincts in the city of Oakland, how I put together, when I ran for mayor of Oakland. We had to put together, I just went down to the voter registrar's office out in the county, and got precinct maps. And then I went to them over the blueprint duplication locations and blew the maps up. I'm an architect, if you don't know that. I was an architect at age 15 doing lot plots and doing three-dimensional structure for adding rooms and dens to people's houses. My father was a master carpenter and builder. He and another contractor, they did 2 houses and they added rooms and dens and decks to 3 or 4 houses. I did the lot plot layouts and the three-dimensional structure framings and architectural design when I was 15 years of age. I had no politics then, of course. I had, when you getting down your age, I didn't have any understanding. I mean, I had that thing, I knew that there were racism in America, but it wasn't there where I could articulate something. I just knew that there were Ku Klux Klans who lynched black folks and stuff like that. And I was just remembering, I was just listening on the radio driving here to a history of the Chicago Defender newspaper. It was very interesting. And so I remember I sold newspapers in the village, what we call University Village out in Berkeley and Albany. Well, that was Cordonesis Village when I was growing up. This is where I lived. This is where, at 8 years of age, my father brought us out here to California in 1945, right at the tail end of World War II, September. And we were still in San Antonio, Texas, for a year while my father was out here at the Oakland Army base, and he was working for the government, a lot of government jobs, wartime jobs, we call it. My father had a deferment from being in the military service because his left leg was a ½ inch shorter than his right leg by growth, And but he was a master carpenter and builder, and he fabricated aircraft framing for tail-end structures of aircraft. A lot of people don't know it, that when you saw those vertical stabilizers and horizontal stabilizers, the tail end of an aircraft, a lot of that in those days was done with hardwood fabrication. So they took his carpentry skill and shifted him from the Kelly field in San Antonio to Oakland, California. And then he was there for a year or so, and then when World War II was over, he sent for us, and we wound up coming to the San Francisco Bay Area. In fact, we stopped and we got off the train literally at a little train station near University Avenue in Berkeley, California. This is where I got off the train. It's an old train line that doesn't exist anymore called the Santa Fe. Different from the Southern Pacific line. You have to imagine, we're talking 1945 here, so you have to understand where I'm coming from. If you understand this history of how I got involved in all this stuff. But that's where we wound up, and we got off the train, and he took us to Cordonisa's village, where the village was government projects. And they were built for World War II, and they had two sections of them. And they had the Navy projects, which was government projects, and Navy wives had many of these, it must have been a couple of hundred apartments there. And then on the Cordonisa side, it overlapped from Albany over into Berkeley, California. And that's where I lived at, growing up. 1945. My father opened himself up a cabinet shop in West Oakland, California, 1504 Adeline Street. This is near what we call the Infirmary Park, which the Black Panther Party calls Bobby Hutton Memorial Park. So in West Oakland, my father had that cabinet shop. He had opened up, he sent for us, and he just opened that cabinet shop up. And of course, I was raised not only to be a carpenter and a builder, but I'm talking about furniture, refinishing, what have you, etc. You know, I was taught all of this, you know, from scratch. My father had good contracts. He was a good businessman in terms of the amount of work he had. Because periodically he'd have to hire one or two men or people from the community. And he also had, they gave him government contracts, because, you know, he had worked with like thousands and thousands of chairs and desks that had to be refinished or repainted and stuff like this. My father got large portions of those kind of contracts from the government, and so he would hire 5 or 6 men many times. You know, he might have a whole summer of work where he's going to do 1,000 or 800 chairs and 200 or 300 desks, and they were government stuff, you know, that kind of stuff. So that was my upbringing, my framing, you know, in West Oakland, and living also residential-wise in Berkeley. So the Bay Area was this East Bay Area was my growth in coming up. I went to Burbank Junior High School, and I became, I excelled in art, and even in the 7th grade, art and drawing 3-dimensional structures. And then when I got to 9th grade, I went into mechanical drafting classes. And this kind of stuff I got A's in. It was just one of those things, I had a knack for it, I guess, because of my father building and stuff like this here. And I had a knack for that. So all my years in the high school, from junior high through high school, I took every kind of architectural design, engineering design course, what have you, in high school. I didn't know what it was to get nothing but an A+ and everything. I'm talking everything. I got an A+ on that stuff. You know, 3-dimensional sectional views, auxiliary views, architectural design. That stuff was just me. It was one of those things, you know. So I said all of this to say that when I got into political organizing, I brought all these skills with me, but I applied them into the political organizing. So when I designed the demographic of community and political organizing in Oakland, California, Congresswoman Barbara Lee will tell you that I turned the town upside down. That's the way she puts it, because she remembers it, and how we put that together. But it was a job, and I was really truly focused on the whole political process of getting more grassroots people, in particular African Americans and grassroots people, into political office.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back, let's look at something.
Okay.
Here I was by 1965, 64, it started 64. Well, actually I started a little earlier than that, but fine. By 64, the Civil Rights Bill had passed. Martin Luther King got that through to Lyndon Baines Johnson, what have you, etc. The Civil Rights Bill also had the War on Poverty program with it. And I went to work for the city government of Oakland, California in 65. But in 64, I created, me and 5 other students, 3 white students and 3 black students we were. And actually, I had quit my engineering job. I had a job prior to this. I went to work for them in the summer of 1960, Kaiser Aerospace and Electronics. Now, Kaiser Company, you know, is right here, it's headquartered here. So Kaiser Aerospace and Electronics, that company, that framework, that factory, that place was out on Doolittle Drive.
Yeah.
Out goes south, the airport, and it was just inside of San Leandro. I went out there in 1960 after a long strike. There had been a steel strike that caused all metal workers to be on strike, even though largely in aircraft industry, my fabrication with metals was primarily aluminum and maybe stainless steel and stuff like this with aircraft. But I went out there looking for a job as a machinist, and the foreman there, you know, he sitting at a desk front end, he says, well, this job has been filled. But he looked at my resume. 4 years, United States Air Force, structural repair, high performance aircraft, what have you. I happened to be honor student in my tech school class when I first went in the United States Air Force. After basic training, they put us in tech schools, 6, 7, 8 month tech schools. And I went into sheet metal mechanical structural repair. And I excelled in that. I excelled so well. I was the honor student of my own class at the time. I'm not trying to brag, I'm just trying to let you know where I was at. You see what I'm getting at in terms of where I was coming from in life.
Mr. Seale,
Yeah.
some of us struggle with the concept of learning, and our schools have not, I think, facilitated real learning, not only for like understanding serious things like architecture and design, but also like our character. So do you feel like how can we be really great learners? And not all of us are gonna or are A plus or A plus students, that's for sure. But how can we become learners, lifelong learners, like it seems like you have?
All right. I got A pluses in math, and architectural design and mechanical drafting. I got C's in English. Language arts. I got C's in language arts. I struggle with that. even when writing my papers in anthropology, I took every anthropology course at Mary College at the time. I had four courses there. And I would get some young sister who had the skills to do a whole lot of grammatical correction for my papers I was writing, so I could get them right, to get A's in those, you know? But that's where I came from in that sense. But learning and investigating, this is a very important thing that happened with me when I moved over into social change, activism. That was important. All of that process, okay, I'm an engineering design major at Merritt College back in those days. You know, 1960, 61, 62, 63. I'm doing 6 credit hours or 9 credit hours a semester because I work a full-time job for 3.5 years on the Gemini missile program. Okay, this at Kaiser Aerospace Electronics, fine. But it's just that I got interested in the civil rights stuff. And one of the most impressive things for me, the latter part of 1962, was when Dr. King came to speak at the open auditorium. And he extolled about, let me say it this way, I got tired of going to churches on a Sunday, and all I was getting was hell and damnation sermons. You know, you're gonna burn in hell and what stuff and I got tired of that. So I really stopped going to churches and stopped going necessarily to hear preachers and stuff. But when I heard about Dr. King, it was different. This man was talking about solving problems out here. And I went to hear him, and I was just enthusiastically impressed with this man when that one statement. I mean, he'd been talking about all these companies that discriminate against people of color all across America. And he named various companies and various groups. And then he got on the bread companies. And I like to imitate him too, because you have to also know another one of my skills is stage acting. I'm also a jazz drummer. And those are the other things I do in terms of performance. But Dr. King said, right here in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay area, he says, Langendorf Bread Company and Kilpatrick's Bread Company will not hire any people of color. He says, and all across America, I say Wonder Bread Company will not hire any people of color. He says, I say we're going to have to boycott them, and we want to boycott them so consistently and so profoundly, we want to make Wonder Bread wonder where the money went. This is the Oakland Auditorium across the street, across the railroad here. There's 7,000 people in this store. That's what that auditorium holds maximum. It says 6,750 seats, but there was 7,000 people in that thing, standing room only. When Dr. King made that statement, it just, the whole audience, and I'm just one individual, I'm up out of my seat. I mean, I'm applauding, I'm totally inspired by this man. I mean, literally. And of course, that made me keep up with Dr. King. And when the Civil Rights Bill was passed, et cetera, you know, I quit my job. I quit my engineering job just to work in the grassroots community. Now you have to remember, I have a top flight job. I'm doing electromagnetic field black light non-destruct testing for all engine frames with the Gemini missile program. This is a NASA space program project that I'm working on, and I'm working in the engineering department. But I become so enamored and so involved with wanting to see civil and human rights to evolve for us that I quit that job. I want to work in the grassroots community, and that's why I wound up, me and some other students, so we organized a tutorial program. And we got 100 youth. We hired them in. First, we went and did the proposals. we investigated how to put a proposal in, and the need to get matching funds from other groups, et cetera, and so on. A building we would have to have, et cetera. And it was 6 of us students, and we were actually working for another group connected with the War on Poverty program, who had their office up at the University of California, Berkeley. And us 6 students, 3 white students and 3 black students, we were all there. We had a certain precinct location of organizing in, and we were doing door-to-door canvassing in the community, precinct by precinct. And then we would get together in the evenings, you know what I mean, after our canvassing and line up our information and stuff. But we started having conversations about what could we do, you know, to begin to end this racist discrimination, institutionalized racism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we came up with this tutorial program, and we did research, did everything. We pulled it together and went before the board, and we argued against another group out there in Richmond, California, where the top director at that time, which was a lot of money, was making $50,000, $60,000 a year, and his 2 assistants were making $30,000 each a year, and then they had 2 or 3 assistant coordinators making $25,000. So all this money is top heavy, you see what I mean, in one sense. Getting it. So what we did is we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us. We created jobs where we only made $390 a month at that time, each one of us equally. And we just set this program up. And when we went before the board, we argued against the people with the top heavy salaries. And then in our program, we would have 6 other individuals who were indigenous to the community that we would train to run this center in a 2-year period, 18-month to 2-year period, and we would lead. But we sold them on the fact that we said the 10th grader can tutor the 1st grader, the 11th grader, the 2nd grader, the 12th grader. So, and we will pay these youth minimum wage, 36 hours a week in the summer, and 16 hours a week in the winter while going to school. So you're dealing with a working class with largely poor and low income African-American, predominantly African-American community. Those little economic checks that went into the households was key to what we call a supplemental educational program. Yes.
We noticed that you asked the question, what can we do? And often us as young people ask the same question. How did you move past it?
How do I move past what, dear?
When we often lose like self-confidence in like creating change.
I don't know.
Ask it again really loud.
I don't understand the question.
Talk about the if you're saying self-confidence, break that down so Mr. Seale can hear, like, parts of what you're saying, and that he might be that.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure. I mean, I had a lot of self-confidence, you know, from Jump Street.
So that might be the difference.
I mean, I always had some of that, for whatever reason. I mean, I believed, I don't know, I guess, I'm trying to see, was I ever depressed? No. Even in jail, I was not, I wasn't depressed. Even in jail, I was. I'm not telling you to go out and cuss out judges, but in the courtroom. But you have to imagine, these people got me the power structure, the Nixon administration, fact, the Nixon administration, and I have the evidence that it was Nixon who gave the directives to destroy and get rid of the Black Panther Party. We have that on a Watergate tape, piece of evidence in archive. My point is that, well, I'm on trial, I'm in jail, and I'm going back and forth to Cook County Jail to the federal court, and I go in the courtroom, and then I first get one of the other lawyers to tell the judge that I got a right to talk to my lawyer, Charles Gary, who's in the hospital back in San Francisco. This is in Chicago while I'm on trial. And so the judge gives a directive that Bobby Seale has the right to talk to his lawyer. And of course, the Cook County Jail warden happened to be a black guy, but this black guy, when he saw me, he says, wow, I've had Dick Gregory in my jail, I've had Martin Luther King in my jail, and now I got the infamous Bobby Seale. It's like, he's bragging. He's bragging. But anyway, this guy brought me up to his office and gave me his chair to call my lawyer in the hospital, etc. And then with that, my lawyer and another attorney on the phone assisting him told me to write out a motion, carbon copies to it, and on legal paper. And that black warden, he says, here. He was happy to give me. And I wrote word for word a motion for the right to defend myself on a legal piece of paper. And then when they bring me to court, you have to remember, I'm in jail. I'm not out in the streets. And then I gave my motion, a copy of my motion to the clerk before the judge walks in. When the judge walks in, here he, blah, 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 here, a motion for Bobby Seale, blah, blah, blah. So I get up out of my seat and step to the lectern and read my motion to the judge for me the right to defend myself in this courtroom. My lawyer is no, Mr. Constance. I says, no, Mr. Constance is not my lawyer. Charles R. Gary was my lawyer when I was arraigned. And he's not here, and we sent a motion in here for you to postpone this trial until he come out of surgery, etc. Sit down. He says, no, I'm not sitting down. So I have an attitude that the Sixth Amendment, I never read the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment gives me the right to have legal counsel of my choice, not the judges. See what I mean? That's why I crossed the man. And when the judge denied it, I says, well, I consider you a racist, a fascist, and a bigot. And you sit up here with, I'm talking to this judge, and they're trying to get me to sit. I says, no. I says, did George Washington actually own slaves? And that picture you got up there of Thomas Jefferson, he owned slaves too. And so it's, ultimately they beat me up in the courtroom, knocked me down, put me in the chair, took me in, and then another day. This went on for 7 weeks. You have to imagine going to court every day, and every other day I'm arguing with this judge for 7 weeks in the courtroom, 5 days a week to keep trial. So I'm just saying, I'm never in a state of depression or nothing. I'm going to protest, do or die. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit up here and say, I remember I was beat up, choked to death in San Francisco County Jail. This is all after that trial. Beat up and choked to death and thrown in the hole. And so when I woke up, they'd taken all my clothes off and they threw in some other jail clothes. When I put the jail clothes on, and then finally, they brought by some food. And the type of hole I was in is a room. It's not the door is like a big cooler box door. You see what I mean? But it has a window head that you can look out stand it up. Then it has a double thing that they can push, and it's a little tray of metal. They push a pan, a metal pan of beans with some cornbread on top of it, or a whole plate of greens with some cornbread on top of it. I remember a couple of times the greens would have the bugs cooked in it. You know, I just throw the bugs out and eat the greens. I didn't throw that food away because I knew better. I do push-ups in jail. You know, I mean, well, I knew a little karate, karate stuff. And that stuff, when these guys come in, they try to jump on me again. Because when they jumped on me that time, there was all these guards around me. One guard had this arm, another guard had this arm, another guard had this leg, another guard had this leg, another guard was choking me around the neck, and the other guard was beating me in the stomach. Then he went down to my testicles and was beating me, and I'm being choked into pure unconsciousness. I mean, this is called a violation of the 8th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. Do you know that? You cannot subject prisoners and people to cruel and unusual punishment. See, that was what was happening to me. Now, this guy who was helping me try to write my script, I gave him one story. Then when he put in the story, he changed it. It says that Bobby Seale was in this fetal position as though I'm totally depressed. I said, why you write this? Well, most people, my sensibilities tell me that most people would be depressed. I said, well, I was never in no fetal position. What do you? I said, look, man, I would sit there, lay on the floor, no bed in this place. This is a hotel. There's no bed here. I'm laying on the floor. I would sit there. There's a light 12 feet up that's beaming down. It's always on. I could close my eyes, and I had an escape dream technique. All I had to do was start remembering periods and events of growing up, my childhood, my teenage years, and stuff like this here. It's almost like I put them in slow motion. I could escape dream, you know? But I'm just saying, and I said, why you put that? Well, I said, well, you don't write no more in my script. Why? I said, because that is not me. I was not in nobody's fetal position. Once I'm became conscious, I'm back again, I'm exercising. If these guys come in here again, I hope to get my karate blows in defense of myself. Maybe they're going to beat me up. So, the lack of confidence, I never really had that. You know, while I was on trial in Connecticut, I took the jails commissioner to court, federal court, because he locked me up in an isolation cell, wouldn't let me have any books, any newspapers, what have you, etc. Definitely wouldn't let me have the Black Panther Party newspaper. Boom, 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 all this stuff, you know, boom, 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 boom. So I took my lawyers, I says, this guy's violating the 8th Amendment of the Constitution. What? He's locking me up. He says, well, they're saying you're locking you up because you have a goatee and long hair. Oh. And I says, a goatee and long hair? Well, goatee and long hair cause lice. I said, let's take this boy to court. You know, now, this is federal court. I'm on trial for my life. They're going to put me in the electric chair if they convict me in the other place. And I'm in jail without bail. Okay. I took them to court just on cruel and unusual punishment, and won hands down. Because Charles Gary told the jail commission, he said, so you locked Bobby Seale up because you say long hair caused lice? Yes. He says, this is the Connecticut State Jails Commission. He says, you're the commissioner or assistant commissioner we were talking. Well, all jails in the state of Connecticut. Yes. That's the women's jails too, right? Yes. Where Erica Huggins, Bobby's friend, is also in jail. Yes. do you lock them up on isolation? They got long hair. Well, no, that's different. Oh, no. Do you have any reports where Bobby Seale refused to take a shower? No. Oh, you just don't like it because Bobby Seale put a class suit in. It wasn't just for me, because I had 5 or 6 white left radicals who had long hair. And a couple other brothers who had these big afros that they locked up. You know, and all I had was a short afro and a goatee, and you wanted to look. Man, I want hands down. The judge ruled us up. I got television in my isolation cell, 2 cells. I got television, I got drafting boards, I got everything I requested. I was, while going back and forth to trial, I am designing at night. I had lamps, everything. I'm designing community cooperative housing concepts in one of the programs of the Black Panther Party. My confidence was always upstairs, out front. I mean, you had another question.
Oh, well, Mr. Seale, you talked about how you went to Kaiser Aerospace. So how do you think that helped you live organized? Can you give us an example?
Well, Gemini Missile Program is a very high-tech, responsible job. What you're dealing with is, when we say non-destruct testing, we would shoot a magnetic field into a machine part. We have what we call a black light. It's like a fluorescent black light. But we would, while the magnetic fields are being shot, we have this kerosene that's loaded with these very high fluorescent, powdery iron particles. And I say powdery, it's like talcum powder, but it's in oil. And it's metal. And you shoot the magnetic field, those little iron particles will gather. If there's a bubble under the surface, they will gather there. And so you'll know. It's called non-destruct testing. So that's a high-tech kind of piece of work. So that's dealing with the particulars and the specifics a lot. When you do architectural design, you know, it's one thing to design, but you got to do a lot of specs and specifications you have to outline, okay? So if I'm doing a 2-story room and den, et cetera, boom, 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 complete with foundation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the specs. So mathematically, I got to calculate how many cubic yards of concrete I need for the foundation, how many linear feet and what size and diameter of wrought iron that I have to use, how many linear feet of 2x4, 2x6, 2x4, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right on down, boom. So everything is calculated. So that's like paying attention to all the specifics and the details. Mm-hmm. So in community organizing, when you come into my political education class, we didn't come in there with a lot of, I hate white folks and boom, boom, boom. I remember one guy, he'd come in there and he called himself, for the first time, he jumps up my car, white man's the devil, boom, boom, boom. I said, look, brother, this is my, don't come in here with that. What you mean? I said, that's a bunch of metaphorical crap. I have no time for that. This is a PE class. We teaching dialectics in here. Yeah, but I said, look, man, the Nation of Islam is across town. You go over there, okay? These are brothers and people over there. Yeah, they got a program, and probably the best program they got. You know, it's financial self-sufficiency in business. I give them credit for that. But you go over there. You don't come in here with that. That's tough. In other words, humanity, I come from a pure anthropological, scientific research about of humanity, you know, and boom, that's where it comes from. So I teach dialectics. Now, a lot of guys, they were busy. The hardcore socialists, they always say dialectic materialism, dialectic materialism. I said, well, I already know it's a material world. But you don't understand. I said, no, brother. First, let me just teach you dialectics. And organizing is the material world, et cetera, boom, 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 boom. So there's several dialectical principles, you know, negation of negation is one, matter is always in motion, etc. Boom. But then they had another one. I read this book by Dialectics, and then I read a little bit about Hegel, and these guys who pulled this together. And I said, wait a minute. Boom. Here's the principle here. Quantitative increase or quantitative decrease causes a qualitative leap or change. I said, wow. And I thought about that. Quantitative increase, quantitative decrease. Boom. And I thought, and it gelled on in my head, this is for a personalized epiphany. I said, this is all mathematical. It's mathematical. I mean, math was key to me. I mean, doing college math, I got A's in that stuff, all the way up to the application of the quadratic formula, you know, but that's about as far as I got. Of course, when they had you remember they had the new math?
Yeah.
Set notation?
Yeah.
They put that right here at Merritt College. And I heard about it, and this one was 62 or something like this. Boom, I said, well, I'm gonna go take this set notation thing, you know what I mean? And I went in and got an A, so it was all over school that Bobby Seale aced this class. You aced the new math class? I said, yeah, I said, ain't nothing set notation. In other words, I can count with five digits or 6 digits, et cetera, and then change. I said, what you do is you learn to count with 10 digits and you repeat 10, and you repeat 10. I said, you can count with 5 and repeat 5 and repeat 5. Well, I'm sure I got an A in that stuff. Boom. So what I'm trying to say here is when I taught a PE class,
Political education.
theoretical education, it was always about organizing. So I took that principle. I said, I can teach more people about what organizing is about so they can see the results of that. So quantitative increase, I would write onto my blackboard in italics, increase. That's the first line. The second line, quantitative decrease. That's increase and decrease. But in bold, my drafting style printing, I put increase at the top and decrease at the bottom. Quantitative increase or quantitative decrease causes a qualitative, and I'd spell out the word qualitative in basic lowercase, but I put it in italics because I want the audience to understand what we mean by qualitative. The application, boom, causes a qualitative leap or change. Now, Huey had read the principle, but Huey did not, there was two different kinds of things about Huey and me. Huey was always a person trying to be precise. And one reason is because a year before he come out of school, his college counselors told him that he was semi-illiterate. And then he got his brother to try to teach him to read. Well, his brother, Melvin, was at this time doing graduate work at the University of California, Berkeley. So I think Huey told his brother, you have to teach me how to read, you have to teach me how to read better before I get out. At any rate, Huey, he just, what? He had a need to try to be precise. So he would say, once he got it, he sort of memorized something. Quantitative increase or quantitative decrease causes a qualitative leap or change. And it's like he's stiff, he has no elaborated way of communicating. Well, I'm very different. I've been a stand-up comedian, a jazz drummer, etc. I rap, I can talk, boom, 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 boom. So, I mean, I could get up and imitate John Wayne and say quantitative increase or quantitative you know, boom, boom, boom. I mean, you know, the Declaration of Independence, I could somewhat imitate Dr. Martin Luther King when it says, when in the course of human events, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary. I mean, so that happens to be a part of me. So I can rap, I can talk, I can, So what I did with Dialectics is taught these brothers and sisters. I says, the increased amount of times that you go to your designated area, in your precinct area, in the business community, and sell your Black Panther Party newspapers, each week, the increased amount of times, and the increased amount of times that you talk with the people in the community about this issues and problem. I says, you are decreasing the apathy and at the same time increasing the consciousness. Increase, decrease. Addition, subtraction. So I concluded with the people in the class. It's all about addition and subtraction. I says, addition and subtraction. And I rapped to them. I says, you have to see this. So one guy got up in the class, Jim Bobby, I think you're wrong, man. You know, you said it's all about addition and subtraction, but you got to talk about multiplication. Actually, I was waiting for this. You know, I said multiplication ain't nothing but a fast way of adding. That's a fact. Look at it. Multiplication is nothing but a fast way of adding. Subtraction, division is a factor of subtracting, dividing aspects of a whole or a part of whatever, etc. Boom. It's still addition and subtraction. So, this is where I came from. And as the party grew, I said, wow, the party's growing right now. This was after the death of Dr. King was killed. Most of my people who grew in my organization so fast. I had 400 members before Dr. King was killed. In 7 months, from April 4th to November when Nixon got elected, my organization moved from 400 members up and down the West Coast to 5,000 members in 49 chapters and branches all across America. I went to practically all those chapters and branches and taught these party members dialectics and political grassroots organizing, demographic organizing in the community, because we needed more and more politicians to change these racist laws and get new laws in that made human sense. That was the whole objective of where I was coming from in organizing the Black Panther Party. Because in 1965, in my demographic investigation across the United States of America at that time, I found only 50 duly elected black politicians in the United States of America. That's the whole of the United States of America. You have to imagine every political seat in America. So when you imagine every political seat, what are you doing? If you go into one county, you're going to find how many cities and towns, you've got a mayor, you've got a city council, or a part-time city council, half-time city council. You got some of those towns and places, and I got but a quarter-time city council. But these are political seats. When you add up all the county supervisorial seats, all the county sheriff seats, all the county city council seats, all in every state throughout the whole United States of America, you know what I found out in 1965? That's over 500,000 political seats one can be elected to in the United States of America.
500,000.
500,000, 500,000, when you added them all up, okay? Now, when I start says, okay, let me focus on where's the gross populations of the black community, where's the gross populations of the Hispanic community, you see what I mean? Where's the heavy populations of the Asian community, which is larger on the West Coast, from Vancouver down. My point, though, is this is what was happening. So, normally, when we got the Black Panther Party going, what we're doing here is that we're looking at this thing in a broader sense than just black civil rights. I'm elevating the whole concept to constitutional, democratic, civil, and human rights. Boom. And what is the goal objective of this grassroots organizing? You know, so when I go to cities and I tell brothers and sisters, you got to do this, you got to set up like this, you got to get in the communities, you got to identify your precincts where you're located, you got to identify who your local politicians are, you got to identify your councilmatic districts, etc. I says, now, between now and next election, 2 years from now, and this was in '68 when this was going on. And boy, and we ran for political office a little bit. We got our feet wet in political office. I mean, we had Kathleen Cleaver running for California State Assembly out of San Francisco against Willie Brown at the time. But Willie Brown later on was a friend of ours in another context. But I'm just saying, I ran for State Assembly against Miller here in Oakland, and and the Peace and Freedom Party was the group, so we coalesced with them because they had people registered to vote, you know, in all these states. So we got Eldridge Cleaver, we got the convention with the Peace and Freedom Party to put Eldridge Cleaver up as a candidate for President of the United States of America. They were on the ballot in 28 states across the United States of America. That's a lot of states, you understand? Eldridge them did about 2.7 million votes. My point though, for 1968, an organization that's just getting 2 years old, we got our feet wet in jumping into the political arena. At the same time, we had a voter registration drive going on along with all the programs. You know, we started with the breakfast program, then we moved immediately with the free preventive medical health care clinics. And then an extension of that program to spread out across the country was the free sickle cell anemia testing program. See what I'm getting at? Now, things like the community cooperative housing program, that was always on the drafting board with me, okay? We hadn't gotten to that yet, you know what I mean? I mean, just coming out with the free breakfast program, and when we did start that program, it spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
It spread beyond the Black Panther Party.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people heard about this, etc. And then the next thing you know, J. Edgar Hoover, the head cop in the United States of America, J. Edgar Hoover, is on national television. The Black Panther's Breakfast for Children program is a threat to the internal security of the United States of America. A breakfast program? A threat to the internal security of America? What the hell are you talking about? I mean, where do you get off at? You know what I mean? And this blacklisting that Nixon administration did, and of course they blacklisted the Black Panther Party. Now, we found for my film in archives, Vanderbilt University probably got one of the toughest archival places in the country. We found a Watergate tape that's been made public, okay? J. Edgar Hoover is on the phone, and who's on the phone with him? Richard M. Nixon, the President of the United States of America. This is really what this was happening. This is for my film. I'm talking about the last 7 years we found this. J. Edgar was on. Now, J. Edgar, what are you doing about these Black Panthers, J. Edgar? Well, sir, we've been moving. He says, well, I need you to get rid of them for me, etc. Now, John Mitchell's going to be calling you. Well, yes, sir. Okay, but John Mitchell's the United States Attorney General. United States Attorney General under Nixon. A month later, after Nixon is sworn in, John Mitchell's on national television. By the end of this 1969 year, we will be rid of these damn Black Panthers. This is John Mitchell, the United States Attorney General.
War.
I mean, you have to see this, the politics. And I'm not even going to mention Trump, because I know we getting ready to get humanity is going, this country is going to get screwed up. I mean, at any rate, that's another thing.
Somebody better ask that
So
question.
community and political organizing was the most profound thing.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question
sure.
before you just go on in your amazing stories? We heard about your achievements in organizing, and I guess today we have a very big struggle in calling people to join us. So what would be some techniques that you had on your time to call people and make them join us?
Well, in our time, we had a high-profile protest movement in the media and in the press. We had anti-war protest movement, we had civil rights protest movement. You know, we had women's rights that evolved out in the middle of that, et cetera, and so on. And since they were so high profile, and they were attacking the protesters on one level or another, whether it was black civil rights protesters, whether our white left radical friend protesters, whether it's young Hispanic brothers and people, whoever, this caused a lot of people. And the Black Panther Party itself had a certain kind of notoriety that we stumbled upon. See, we stumbled upon a notoriety. Now, I don't want you to try to do what we did. And remember, when we started, like I explained, I just told you, I counted up to, and it probably might have been a few more I missed. There's only 50 black politicians duly elected. You know, very little or none Asians, one or two here, one in Oakland, as I remember, was elected. But what I'm saying is that when you went across country, and especially down south, you know, where voting rights had been blocked right on up to 1964. The Voting Rights Act passed. It's going to take time. I didn't start the Black Panther Party until October 1966. You have to see that 2-year period. You see what I'm getting at? And I created a program in North Richmond. It was a solid program. It worked, etc. Then I moved to the city government of Oakland, California. I worked for the city government, Department of Human Resources. And I worked in the War on Poverty program, and I worked in the community target area of North Oakland, which is the community where I live at, where Merritt College at the time was located in North Oakland, where I was enrolled. I lived across the street from Merritt College, you know, et cetera. So I'm just saying, getting people to join you is one thing. I would like to say this though. Even in that first year of the Black Panther Party, from October '66 to October 1967, we never had any more than 50 people in the Black Panther Party for that whole year. It's very important to understand. What we had was a lot of notoriety. You see? I led an armed delegation to the California State Legislature. Now, it wasn't an armed delegation where you're pointing guns at people. It wasn't that. You have to understand. I didn't organize that kind of thing. You know what I mean? I knew what we were doing and how it should be done. We would just had our guns with us, just like the NRA people had their guns. They would go up to the Capitol, you know, to argue against, and they sometimes had their guns with them. You know, they put their rifles and hang them on their shoulder or something like that, you know, not pointing the weapons. And the same thing with us. I had an Army 45. Weapon was not concealed, therefore it was not illegal. That was the law, you see. So when I led that armed delegation, I went there to read Executive Mandate number 1 for the Black Panther Party. What am I reading it for? Mulford. Mulford was a state assemblyman and he represented Oakland and Berkeley. And he was trying to put a bill in, the California State Legislature trying to put a bill in to say that no one could carry loaded weapons inside city limits. Now notice he said you couldn't do it inside city limits. That means you could carry them outside city limits, a loaded weapon, right? Why? Because they did not want to make a law that infringed upon hunters' rights, the NRA. He said, I'm getting at, they didn't want to make that kind of law. They said, we was primarily inside city limits observing the police. We stand a reasonable distance away. We researched the law. I made Huey research the law and make sure we had every legal right to do what we do. Huey was in 2 years in law school at the time. So with his professor in law school, he had a private law school over in San Francisco. And he researched the law, that we could observe police with open carry guns law books, and tape recorders. This is what we want. And we went out to observe the police.